On this week's episode of It Doesn't Have to Be Terrible, we are diving into one of my biggest pet peeves in the world, which is hustle culture, fail fast culture, entrepreneurial bro culture. And I'm specifically going to talk about how not to drive your business into the ground as all those dudes really want you to. Hi, welcome to It Doesn't Have to Be Terrible with me, Caroline Snyder, a podcast where we explore the stories, topics, and questions that help us as individuals better understand how we impact and are impacted by the financial world around us. Boo 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 boo. Today we're going to dive straight into one of the many financial topics that I would list in my very long list, like a tomb. Is it a tome? A tome. A tome of pet peeves. And that is the entrepreneurial fail fast hustle culture. It's nauseating. So I went to business school. I got my MBA. I learned a lot of the foundational tools and skills and knowledge that I needed in order to launch a business. There are some things that I feel like I would have liked to have known that would have been taught that weren't taught. That's okay. That's really not the point of today. The point of today is that I left school with a lot of knowledge about how really big companies are run. And some of that knowledge is directly transferable to small businesses, and some of it is absolutely not transferable in any way, shape, or form. And then I left school, and a couple years down the line, I started my business. I started Verity Advising. And when I started Verity Advising, I did, I think, what many people would have done in my situation and started, like Googling things and looking online and trying to get information about groups and communities. And it became really clear to me that there was a very vocal, strong camp in the entrepreneurial world that was all about hustle culture. And that hustle culture mentality, that go, 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 that if you're not making it, you're not grinding hard enough. That mentality has since, I think, permeated into the wider society. And I think there's been some backlash recently, and I am very appreciative of that backlash. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the backlash was due to the pandemic, which that sucks that that's how we had to get there, but I'm still glad we got there. Not enough backlash has happened yet, though. That's why I'm going on this rant today. But this fail fast hustle culture that permeated the entrepreneurial circles and then sort of dripped into the rest of society, I think has a few fundamental flaws that really mess us up as human beings in the financial world, right? Like living our lives where money touches us and where we touch money in whatever ways that may be. One, the lifestyle is just not sustainable, right? Like you cannot fit into the box perfectly of go, go, go all the time. It's tiring. It's exhausting. It doesn't take into account, I don't know, other responsibilities, getting sick, sleeping, any of those things. It expects us to be robots or to be as close to robots as possible. I think about this with the biohacking trends too, is all of these things are pushing us to be what I don't really think we were meant to be. and pushing our bodies to a limit that is not sustainable. And maybe that's the biggest issue with it that I have, the unsustainability of it. Because inevitably, when you fall off the wagon, as one does in a really restrictive diet, right? When you don't wake up and have your bulletproof coffee, when you don't do your CrossFit, when you don't have your bullet journal perfectly listed out for the day, and you don't complete all of the tasks on your list. When those inevitabilities happen, right? When something goes awry, what ends up happening in this cultural norm, I guess is the right way to put it, or in this, maybe it's just culture, in this culture, is that people feel really bad. They feel like they've done something wrong. They feel guilty. They feel like they messed up. And so then when their business is not scaling, or when their lives are not drastically improving or hitting whatever metrics they're supposed to be hustling towards, then the culture, the hustle culture, can turn around and say, well, you messed up your bullet journal, and that's why. Or you didn't go to all of your workouts, and that's why. Or you didn't meditate in the right way, and that's why. It ends up being something where when someone doesn't succeed in whatever ways they're shooting for, right? When you're not hitting those metrics, you feel bad and you feel like it's your fault. And while, of course, we as individuals absolutely impact whether or not we hit metrics, it is not the only factor that plays a role in whether or not you succeed at your goals. And this hustle culture, this kind of like fail fast entrepreneurial culture that seeps into these other parts of our lives is completely ignoring those external factors. So we've got one big issue with it is that it's tiring, it's exhausting, it's unsustainable, it's quite miserable, frankly. It's not taking into account other people's other responsibilities or like the wholeness of our lives. The other issue is that it's assuming that we're all coming from the same place. It is assuming that we are starting on an equal footing, that we are all at the same starting line, that the external factors are all the same, right? Again, it's that robotic nature of it. And truth be told, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that we absolutely are not all starting from the same place and that we are not starting with the same background and the same privileges and the same safety nets. In fact, there's a huge variety of diversity when it comes to what we come to the table with, right? One of the things that drives me up the wall the most, there's so many things that drive me up the wall. One of the things in this tome of pet peeves, of this tome of annoyances, is how politicians in this country talk about how they love small businesses and they love entrepreneurship and the American dream is so special and pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is so wonderful and how we're all so special. Because the policies in place don't match up with that rhetoric at all, right? So when we think about entrepreneurship in the United States, often what comes to mind first for folks, not always, but often, are these huge companies that are venture capital backed and that end up IPing and making the founders tons of money, right? The Facebooks of the world, the Amazons of the world. Yes, they are great successes. I'm not going to say like that isn't impressive what they have done. But the vast majority of entrepreneurs in this country are not trying to make the next Amazon, the next Meta. They are trying to create small businesses in their community or online that economically, financially sustain them and their families, potentially create new jobs for other people, and allow them to live a lifestyle that they want to live, right? Like that is what the vast majority of small business owners want. And small business owners are the vast majority of entrepreneurs in this country. In order to create that small business or create that business, whether or not it stays small, maybe it grows to be a medium business, maybe it even grows to be a large business. But in order to create that sustainable business, that one that is making a healthy profit year after year, that one that enables the employees and the owners to work the number of hours that means that they live relatively decent lives, that business model is a very, very different business model than the startup that is backed by venture capital. It is a very different business model than the startup that is backed by family money. It's a very different business model than any of these startups that have pushed this hustle culture, this fail fast, like just grind, just grind, just grind, just grind. Don't worry if you fail, you can use that to your advantage. Well, it only works if you fail to use that to your advantage if you come with an incredible safety net with you. And the vast majority of us don't have it. I think of myself as someone who comes from a lot of privilege. I also cannot just let my business fail because my business is what feeds my family. It's what pays my mortgage. It's what covers our health insurance. It is the family business that sustains my livelihood. And there's no one who is going to just prop me up in order for me to try again. Nor should there be, right? If I can't figure it out, then I need to figure out something else. And that's okay. That's not the fail fast hustle culture, though. The fail fast hustle culture is saying that you can do it again and again and again and again. And there's this expectation that the money is just going to appear because the people who are pushing this culture, these norms, the people who are pushing, quite honestly, the stuff they're trying to sell to you in order to make their lives more comfortable, those people have safety nets that most small business owners don't have and most people don't have. And to pretend like it's just that you didn't try hard enough, you didn't grind hard enough, you didn't hit the right metrics, you weren't doing the right things, you weren't meditating hard enough, and that's why someone fails is disgusting. Like, that's disgusting. It is saying, I'm really privileged. I come with a safety net. Yes, I did all of these things and I was successful. But also, even if I hadn't done all these things, I would have still been like, quote unquote, successful because I didn't really need to do any of it in the first place. And then saying that to someone else who's not in that place, it's disgusting and it's offensive. Going back to when I started my company, I think in part because of what I was taught in business school, which was a very like traditional business school in a lot of ways. And in part because of these entrepreneurial kind of circles that I was vaguely related to. I said, excuse me to the mic. Excuse me, Mike. Because of those things, I thought what success for my business looked like was scaling and growing and creating a business where eventually I could sell it, right? And like that was how I was going to make money. That is not necessarily a bad direction for a business to go in. I'm not hating on that direction. I'm not hating on scaling. But what I'm saying is if that is your goal and simultaneously you need your business to cover your bills. Those two things are not necessarily going to match up, right? The business that's able to scale and grow and get sold often is operating at a loss for a lot of time, often is not paying the founder, is not paying those early employees in the way that is sustainable for someone to actually live their daily lives. And pretending that that was just like the way you make a business really messed me up, right? It took me years to figure out, oh, I'm never going to fit in that box, nor are really very many small businesses going to fit in that box. We have a totally different box, and it's a much more beautiful box, in my opinion. It's a box where you can pay your bills. It's a box where you can go to the grocery store. It's a box where you're not living on debt or living on daddy's money or whatever it is. And going back to my rant about the politicians are saying, we love small businesses, we believe in the American dream, yada, 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 yada. But they're actually helping box number one, this hustle, fail fast entrepreneurial world where they're not paying taxes a lot of the time and they're getting backed by venture capital and getting kind of like buoyed up by the systems in place. And meanwhile, the small businesses keep getting called the backbone of society, but are not being sustained or helped by systemic structures, economic structures in this country. A good example of that systemic buoying that happens for these VC-backed scaling businesses that, don't matter if they actually fail, are during the pandemic and the PPP loans that went out. My business got a PPP loan. Lots and lots of businesses got PPP loans. I'm in no way saying that PPP loans were not excellent and a very useful tool in a very scary time. But a lot of giant companies and individuals received very hefty PPP loans who under no circumstances needed the money and instead took it as an interest-free gift, got it 100% forgiven by the government, and kind of like took that money and ran, but didn't need that money. And yes, like the same thing was offered to small businesses, but it was the larger businesses, it was the people with more resources and power and privilege who were able to get the larger loans, in part because the loans were based on previous revenues, and previous expenses. So they were able to kind of like push for that. But also because they had the resources in place to figure out how to maximize the system versus the vast majority of small businesses in the country were like, cool, I'm going to use the instructions online, I'm going to fill out the form, and I'm going to send it in to the best of my ability. I don't have a team of super connected experts who are going to help me figure out how to make sure that I get the most I can possibly get out of this. So again, it's like this, yes, it was given to everyone for once, that was good, but this whole group didn't need it in the first place, and this other group desperately needed it. And this other group was the group who probably didn't get as much as they should have in the first place. And again, like it all goes back to this like fail fast mentality, this idea of failing fast is good. Like push it to the limits, see what happens, see what sticks, see what kind of business you can create. And if it fails, no biggie, take what you learned here and try it again. That works great when you don't need the money. Like that works great when you don't need to pay for your bills. That works great when you aren't trying to cover your health insurance premiums, right? All of those things work great if and if and if and if. And this hustle culture is directly negatively impacting the 99% of folks who hear about it, who end up feeling guilty, who end up feeling bad about it, but who can't make it work for themselves because it was never designed for you in the first place. I cultivated an anti hustle culture mentality for myself. And then I also think I had to create anti hustle culture. I think of them as those like bumpers on a bowling lane to keep me in the lane. Um, and a lot of what I've done personally has been about creating really, really clear boundaries with my calendar and with my clients. So I have a policy that I actually have written on my signature of my email that I do not necessarily respond to emails within 24 hours, that in order for me to be thoughtful in my work and in order for me to be present with my family and to take care of myself, that sometimes my email responses are not going to happen within that 24-hour period of time. And that's okay. And if someone is not okay with that, probably we're not a very good fit for working together because I don't want to um, perpetuate that expectation of how we live. Our brains don't move that fast. If you want me to respond to everything within 24 hours, I'm going to miss things. I'm going to not understand. I'm just going to try to get something out for the sake of getting it out instead of being thoughtful and meaningful and thorough. And so that is a really important boundary. Another boundary that I instituted for myself when I was really trying to break free of this hustle culture mentality that I think I sort of like almost accidentally fell into right after grad school. Because I felt like at that point I was like in the water, sort of. Anyway, one of the other things I did that I found really, really helpful was to set times of when I would check my email. Email seems to, now that I'm saying all this out loud, seems to be the gateway drug to a lot of this stuff. But I would set very specific times and I would only check email twice a day. I would check it in the morning and I would check it in the afternoon. And I would put on a timer and say, cool, I'm going to look at email for 30 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, I'm done and I'm moving on. I'm not as strict with myself anymore with that, in part because now that I have spent years doing that, and now that my clients are very aware of what my boundaries are, I don't feel like I need to be quite as strict with myself. And now that I've created that habit, I can check email 3 times a day, or I can pop in and out, and it won't end up sucking my life away because I'm used to those internal boundaries for myself. But I think the more structures that you can put into place to force yourself to take a break, to force yourself to take a beat, to stop and think and be like, am I doing this thing, right? If I'm trying to hit this metric, whether it's part of a business that you're starting, whether it's a hobby, whether it's something fitness related, whether it's something in your career, whatever it may be, asking yourself, am I trying to hit this metric because I really want to hit this metric? And if I do hit this metric, right? If I do go to the gym 5 days a week, if I do get this promotion, if I do hit this savings goal, if I do open up this small business, then what? Like, what does my life look like in that scenario? And is that new scenario, is it sustainable? Is it something I actually want to live in for the long term? And if it's not a good metric. And if it is, cool. What is the sustainable path to get you there that's not going to make you a miserable pile of poop? now, right? Like, what is a sustainable path? Is it going from 0 times a week at the gym to 5? Probably not. You're probably going to get injured and then you're never going to go again. Might it be going 1 time a week for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month, and then seeing how things are going? Probably that's a better path forward, right? So thinking about, how do I build up? How do I start this business? How do I build this business? How do I create this financial reality for myself in a way that is centering the humanity of who you are and who you will be once you've hit that metric, or once that metric has changed and you didn't have any control over it? Centering the humanity. I think that's really the whole point, right? Like, hustle culture, fail fast culture removes the humanity that's inherent in us. It expects privilege in the system. And what I want for the world, and what I think the vast majority of humans want for the world, is just to be able to be human and to live your lives, find joy, have some relaxation, do things you want to do, cover your grocery bill. And with that, I bid you adieu. As always, I'm rooting for you. Have a lovely rest of your week. And come find me on Instagram or YouTube. I was about to say I'm always here. I am not always here. But when I am here, I'm really here. Please rate, like, subscribe, do all the things, leave a comment, leave a review. All of that engagement means a ton to me. Thank you so much. Bye.